answer questions you may have at this point. We expect today's session to be under the hour that we have allocated, so hopefully we'll give you some good content and give you back a little bit of time as well. If you're having trouble connecting voice over IP, there is some dial-in information to be able to connect for audio to today's session as well. Next slide, please. So some quick background on who we are and why we're presenting on this. QTS is a Microsoft Gold certified partner in a number of competencies, silver and a number of others. That's kind of the corporate designations. But more important, in the New York metro area, we are what's known as a locally managed partner, which means we're one of a very, very small group of partners with a close working relationship with the local Microsoft office. That gives us access to a lot of resources, including technical resources, funding, access to programs, things that help our customers' deployments be very successful. Over the last 3 years, Microsoft has given out their Partner of the Year awards. We were winner all 3 years, and the winner all up for the entire New York Metro District 2 of those last 3 years. We've also won a number of worldwide, national, regional, and local awards over our 15-plus years as a managed partner and 24 years in business serving organizations throughout the United States. Marty Trionfo is our practice lead. He's a great example of what makes QTS great, senior level talent and very strong expertise, as well as good communication skills and an ability, sorry Marty, great communication skills and an ability to share knowledge with our customers and collaborate working together to deliver solutions. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Marty, who heads up our productivity and collaboration practice, which largely means the Office 365 products and their on-premise equivalents, and that includes SharePoint. So take it away, Marty, and I'll pick back up at the end.
Thank you very much, Neil, and thank you for setting the expectations around our communication skills and so forth. I appreciate that. So good afternoon, everyone. As Neil said, we're going to be taking a high-level look at SharePoint Server 2016. We're going to try and focus on the on-premise SharePoint 2016, although I think you'll quickly come to see that there's been a lot of effort to enhance the on-premise experience with a lot of cloud integration and in particular features that have only been available in Office 365 and SharePoint Online. Quick look at some of the major topics we're going to cover, some quick statements around the value for SharePoint Server 2016, and then we'll look at UI enhancements, content management enhancements, which are significant for experienced SharePoint users. They'll like some of the things we'll see there. Then we'll highlight some of the cloud integration and then talk about considerations if you around upgrading your on-prem to SharePoint Server 2016. Our 2016 on-prem demo environment was not available for today, but what I've done is I've included a lot of screenshots in my slides, and I will be able to jump over to our Office 365 tenant, which the UI reflects a lot of what you'll be able to see in your on-prem. So briefly, a little history of SharePoint, starting with SharePoint Portal Server back in 2001, and going on up through what was known as the MOS, Microsoft Office SharePoint Server, and then SharePoint 2010 and 2013. I think a lot of customers started really to get value out of SharePoint in the 2007 version, and we find a lot of customers are still on that version because it worked well for them as a document repository and some like basic collaboration and file sharing. You saw dramatic changes, I think, in SharePoint 2010, which introduced things like the ribbon for a lot of the functionality. That brought it, kind of caught SharePoint up to Office, Microsoft Office Suite, which from the 2007 version included the ribbon for its functionality. So Microsoft trying to deliver kind of consistency across the different platforms. And then SharePoint Server 2013, which is up until 2016 had been the most current version, and includes a lot of advanced, more advanced features, much more contemporary UI, and we saw a lot of third-party vendors making available add-ons and other kind of applications that could be run successfully on SharePoint Server 2013, and Office 365, which is using SharePoint 2013 as well. And now finally we have Server 2016, just recently released only a few months ago to manufacturing. So what is Server 2016 all about? The main driver for this release has been to enable customers who may not be in a position to move to the cloud to utilize some of the newest innovations that the cloud technologies provide. You'll see that much of this is wrapped up in a better user experience and a more people-centric experience. One of the things to note is that SharePoint Server 2016 is built on the same code structure that SharePoint Online has been utilizing for the past couple of years. Some folks talked about Server 2016 being the last version of on-premise SharePoint. What I'm hearing more recently is that that's not the case, and Microsoft is committed to supporting their on-prem customers. However, you will see a lot of the new features will try and leverage cloud integration. So a customer who has purely on-prem may get a more limited set of new features and capabilities, whereas those who have at least some presence in the cloud will get a much better hybrid experience. One of the big features in Server 2016 is going to be the mobile app that will be available. I'm going to show you some screenshots of that later on. And generally just an improved hybrid experience. And for administrators, if you have any experience with doing SharePoint upgrades, which again I mentioned that many customers are still on SharePoint 2007, the upgrade process has always been challenging, and there's always been some risk mitigation that has to go on when you do a SharePoint upgrade. With 2016, they are changing the upgrade and patching model significantly so that there'd be essentially zero downtime and allow the kind of slipstreaming of updates into your on-prem environment much more easily. So, oh, I think I just missed I missed a slide there. Pardon me. One of the UI changes that you're going to see is the app launcher, which brings the on-prem environment, the UI there, more in line with Office 365, giving users an easy way to launch their applications. Here's a screenshot. If you're a Office 365 user, this is going to be familiar to you, that the little waffle board up in the left-hand corner, you click on that and you bring down all the tiles that have the apps that you are permissioned for. And you can see those are, in Office 365, they're beyond just email, pardon me, beyond just SharePoint. But this is an example of something that's now going to be available in the on-prem version of SharePoint Server 2016. Some other subtle changes that will occur. If you look at the two, on the left side we've got 2013, on the right side 2016. Not a whole lot different, but again, Microsoft trying to provide a consistent user experience so that as users move kind of back and forth between an on-prem environment and perhaps a hybrid cloud site or sites that you may have, they'll have a consistent experience. So here's a screenshot of the new mobile app for essentially the three main mobile platforms. They're going to start with iOS, so that's the screenshot you see there, and then it'll be available for Android and Windows later this year. But essentially you've got a OneDrive document library being displayed, and for those that don't know, OneDrive is the individual user storage that's available to Office 365 users, and that storage can be synced down to your local desktop, so users can easily maintain files locally and then access them anywhere by going through their OneDrive site, which is part of Office 365. And you'll see on the left-hand side there's a nice representation of that file, the document library, right on that iOS device. So in addition, here's a few more flavors of content being displayed on mobile devices. And it's important to note that even if you're not a Office 365 user or SharePoint Online user, the mobile device, the mobile app will be able to display content from your on-prem environment, not only in SharePoint 2016, but if you have an existing SharePoint 2013 environment, the mobile app will be able to display content from it. Now I think there's a caveat there in that SharePoint 2013, out of the box, the sites are not responsive design, so they don't always display well on smaller screens, but there is now a lot of support for modifying those pages to be responsive so that the sites will adjust themselves to the different screen sizes as needed. But the mobile app will be able to display content to your from your on-prem environment for both 2016 and 2013, 2013 with some modifications to the pages. So content management, another area that's significantly improved in SharePoint Server 2016. The file upload size is being increased. It had been 2 GB for an individual file to be uploaded to a document library. That's now been increased, and interestingly, they have not published a limit, but they are recommending that what we tell our users is that the limit is 10 gigabytes for individual upload size. In addition, the 5,000 item view threshold, which may seem like a rather arcane thing to bring up in a high-level overview of the new platform, but this is important. If you have experience with SharePoint over time, document libraries easily grow beyond 5,000 items. In fact, they can have hundreds of thousands of items. However, there's been some internal SQL limitations around how SharePoint manages those large lists and libraries. And finally, after only 15 years, Microsoft has been able to put in some built-in logic that will handle that for us. Previously, administrators had to do a lot of additional work and be quite on top of list and library maintenance in order to make sure that you manage that 5,000 threshold limitation. But that's now going to be taken care of automatically in SharePoint Server 2016. In addition, expanded support in file names. So you'll see you can have longer file names. I think this came about because as more and more customers migrated on-premise file shares in their typical NTFS share to SharePoint document libraries and OneDrives that were in the cloud in order to take advantage of all that space, the storage is available there. They found that there are a number of customers were experiencing a lot of pain around the file names that had been in use by their users, and particularly around taking a file share that has a number of nested folders with long names plus long files within those folders. That created quite a few problems. So they're looking to address some of that in SharePoint Server 2016. Further, in terms of content management and user experience, document libraries will now support some additional keyboard shortcuts that many users have wanted. You can see an example of some of those there. And also being able to set the default document type as ODF in SharePoint libraries. There are many SharePoint customers who are not as committed to Office, and specifically to Word or Excel, and they wanted to be able to give those customers the ability to use other programs as default to edit their files. So ODF is now an available choice for the default file type. And an important aspect, and this has been addressed quite significantly in the Office 365 space around compliance, the ability to set enterprise-wide policies and rules around documents. In some cases, archiving or removal of documents or movement of documents from one file, a document library, to another document library. So some of this has been included now in SharePoint Server 2016. The out-of-the-box compliance center, that if you get a new Office 365 tenant, you get an out-of-the-box compliance center that's kind of ready for you to create rules around document compliance. That now is going to be available in SharePoint Server on-prem 2016, where you'll get the ability to create, you'll get a compliance center that essentially mimics the one that's in Office 365, and you can establish rules and policies around documents. That first bullet there around deleting files from OneDrive for business sites, just speak briefly around OneDrive. Even if you're committed to SharePoint Server on-prem, you may want to have an Office 365 tenancy for the purpose of gaining OneDrive storage for your users. So you're not moving team sites up there, but you're using it so to give your users this OneDrive storage capability. Well, coming with that is the administrative maintenance issues associated with having a few hundred or a few thousand users now storing their files up in Microsoft Office 365 OneDrive. Not having global and centrally managed capabilities around those files has been a problem. We've done a number of OneDrive for Business quick starts where we help customers get files up there for their users, and a lot of time is spent in giving them administrative capabilities, usually built with PowerShell scripts to allow them to manage those distributed files. Now that's going to be built into SharePoint Server 2016, so even though you're using on-prem Server 2016 and your users may be storing files in Office 365, you'll have administrative control over those documents and files as well. That's a significant improvement from even just a year ago. So now we'll talk a little bit about the cloud integration and hybrid in SharePoint Server 2016. So hybrid has been something that's been available really since even as far back as SharePoint 2010. You could have an on-premise environment kind of connected to a Office 365 environment. It really was improved with SharePoint Server 2013, where your on-prem 2013 environment could more seamlessly kind of share content back and forth between those two environments, and in particular around search, where you could get somewhat of a unified, not fully, but somewhat of a unified display of search results. But setting up hybrid has always been a challenge. Administrators would know that it's not trivial to do that, and it's been they've gone to great lengths to make it easier to set that up now. You can choose, there's something called the scenario picker in SharePoint Server 2016 and in the installation that allows you to basically choose from a set of scenarios around how your environment will be set up, and then the necessary prerequisites and configuration will be done. So if you have an Office 365 cloud site, you can more easily now integrate that with your on-prem experience. Similarly, we just talked about OneDrive for Business. So your on-prem, your team sites are all on-prem. That's where your intranet content lives. But whenever users are looking for what used to be called My Sites, which is where they would keep their files, they're going to be accessing OneDrive for Business. that's now fully supported and very easy to configure at the time that you're setting up your Server 2016 environment. And with respect to search, you now do get a truly unified search result set from your on-premise and your cloud environment. In SharePoint Server 2013, if we were to configure that now, you would get, basically you get two different sets of results that you can display sort of side by side on a page. But you'll see I've got a nice screenshot that shows you the unified result set that you get back in with SharePoint Server 2016. So some other UI changes. This is a card-based user homepage, and card-based pages have been for I guess about the last year or two become very common with lots of consumer sites, lots of information-oriented sites, and so that model is now it's become available in Office 365, and I can give you a little demo of my own page that looks just like that. So this page comes about when a user pulls down the little waffle up in the upper left there and clicks on SharePoint. They don't necessarily go to your intranet homepage. They go to their sites page, which is displayed in this card format here. This is one of the things that you can expect to see in SharePoint Server 2016. It'll be one of the features that's kind of slipstreamed in later on, beginning probably later this year or in 2017. But that's an attempt to, again, unify the on-prem and the cloud experience. In addition, this is an example of a SharePoint user profile. If you install SharePoint Server 2016, you're going to get a unified profile with one that may exist up in the cloud. If you don't use Office 365, your on-prem profile will still have this appearance to it. And then lastly, an enhanced team site homepage. Again, this is another feature that is available in Office 365, but is expected to be slipstreamed in as a feature in early 2017 for on-prem. So the ability to just have much, again, more kind of card-based, contemporary-looking home pages for team sites. And then here's a screenshot from a unified search result set. So there's the two highlighted sections are items that were found and returned in search results. One is in Office 365, and one is on-prem. So that's the kind of experience you can expect to have if you're using Office 365 and storing some content in SharePoint Online as well as your on-prem. Okay, so some important things to note about SharePoint Server 2016. Things that are not going to be in there, and I think this is actually very important for a number of customers, and you really want to consider these before you decide that you need to upgrade. Many customers use SharePoint Server as a single server standalone mode, where you basically get SQL Express and SharePoint all bundled on that same box. That's no longer supported. You can install something called Single Server Farm, but it's not supported for production. Meaning not supported officially by Microsoft for production. It's really only to be used for development or test purposes. So that's something to keep in mind. You also won't have SharePoint Foundation. With every prior version of SharePoint, there was a version of it called Foundation, which was free, and you didn't need, you could just download it, and it had limited capabilities, not all the full capabilities of the enterprise version, but those capabilities were enough to do basic intranet and document collaboration, and those basic kind of familiar SharePoint activities. There's not going to be a SharePoint Foundation 2016. So that's not available. However, Microsoft will continue to support Foundation 2013, which can still be downloaded and installed with no charge, at no charge from Microsoft. Now, this next one is I think very important, because a lot of customers certainly from SharePoint 2007 and up have been using Excel and Excel services to do, in some cases, just basic rendering of Excel content on SharePoint pages, and in other cases, very kind of sophisticated BI dashboards containing with links to live SQL legacy data, line of business data, if you will, and displaying that on their SharePoint pages. Excel services is no longer going to be part of SharePoint Server for version 2016. So what was built into as an enterprise feature in 2013 and 2010 and 2007, that's not going to be there in 2016. So if you're using that in production, you have to know how to transition to the new model, which is something called Office Online Server, which will contain the Excel services components that used to be built directly into SharePoint. Office Online Server is an on-prem server that is the replacement for the Office Web App server. If you've used, since version 2010, if you've used Office Web Apps in an on-prem environment, you had to stand up a separate server to deliver Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and OneNote as a web app, the lightweight version of those suite products. So the Office Web App Server goes away and is replaced by Office Online Server, which is, again, run on-prem, even though it's called Office Online Server. It's in your environment, and it's serving up the browser versions of the suite applications, but now it's also going to have other responsibilities. One of the significant ones is Excel services, and all of that kind of BI stuff that you're familiar with is now going to be bundled into that Office Online Server. So that's, I think, a significant consideration for a lot of customers. So keep that in mind. Some other things to be aware of in preparation for any sort of an upgrade. All of your databases must be on version 15, which is essentially SharePoint Server 2013. There is no upgrade, no direct upgrade from 2007 or 2010. If you have any experience having upgraded to 2013, you probably knew that already, because there was no direct path from 07 to 2013. You had to build an interim 2010 server or farm and kind of do an incremental upgrade, or use a third-party tool to build out a new 2013 farm and then migrate your content. Those same requirements would still apply for 2016. You have to get all your databases to version 15, or build out a new 2016 farm and then use a third-party tool to migrate the content over. Both of those have pros and cons associated with them. We talked early. I mentioned the easing the administration of and application of updates and upgrades for as they come along for SharePoint Server 2016. So this next bullet describes that a little bit. I have not had any experience with it yet. I've just been reading what Microsoft is putting in place, but their public update channel will provide downloads of new features as they become available, and those features could be patches and hot fixes, as well as new capabilities, like some of the screens that I showed you earlier around what the changes to the UI. Those things come in automatically into Office 365 and SharePoint Online. We see subtle changes taking place as things are kind of rolled into the active tenants. With your on-prem environment, you'll have the ability to download. You'll get notification, then you'll download those enhancements, changes, and fixes, etc., through this public update channel. However, you must be a software assurance customer to do that. So again, in consideration of your upgrade, you want to look at what your current licensing model is like. And lastly, for folks who have been doing some design work, there's quite a lot of customization can be done in the SharePoint browser environment, but in many cases you need to go into SharePoint Designer to do some things. There won't be a SharePoint Designer 2016. That Microsoft has made clear, but Service 2016 will fully support SharePoint Designer 2013. If you're, in some cases, if you're maintaining different versions, like you have a SharePoint 2010 farm as well as a SharePoint 2013 farm, you need to have both of those Designer versions available anyway. So going forward, you'll just be using Designer 2013 to customize your SharePoint Server 2016 environment. That's all I have for the high-level look at SharePoint Server 2016. I thank you again for your attention. What I'll do now is turn it over to Neil and for the call to action and next steps.
Okay, so if you can advance to the next slide, please. So QTS, as a company, we help you to implement the technologies that we're talking about in our seminars and events. We do that from a services perspective following Microsoft best practices and the Microsoft Solutions Framework, or MSF. And the MSF is essentially a 5-stage process for deploying technology. It starts with the envisioning stage. What do I want to do? What are my goals? What's the benefits? What do I want to accomplish or achieve? The next stage is planning. So if we decide, for example, we're building a house, maybe a ranch-size house with a 2-car garage and an add room for a swimming pool in a few years, then the next step after we make that decision is to build a blueprint for the house, and that's the planning stage, doing a detailed design of what it is we want to accomplish to anticipate all the different issues and make sure that everything's going to work the way we want it to. Those first 2 phases are encompassed in a service offering we have called QTS QuikDesign for SharePoint, and that can be purchased from us, or if you're a Microsoft Enterprise Agreement customer with software assurance vouchers for planning services, you can use your planning services vouchers to get our services at no out-of-pocket cost. Assuming you have a design, or if you don't have a design, that you're just standing up a pilot that's fairly vanilla, we then offer what's called a quick start engagement for SharePoint or SharePoint Online, and that aligns to the developing or build stage of the Microsoft Solutions Framework, which is building a pilot environment or building out the production environment. The last 2 stages are stabilize, which is really thorough testing, and then broad deployment. And when we look at a project as a whole life cycle end-to-end, we call that quick deploy. So those are the different offering types we have that map to the different stages of the solutions framework. If you can advance us to the next slide, Marty, please. And in that slide, we will talk about next steps and call to action. So if the topics discussed in today's webinar are of interest to you, we'd be happy to have a meeting or a call to discuss the technology and how we can help you. If you have planning vouchers, then we can assist you with our quick design services and leverage the planning vouchers for payment. Also, if you have software assurance training vouchers, they can be utilized for training around SharePoint as well, and we have a couple of great training partners we can engage you with for that. And then, as we said, we have quick start and quick deploy engagements in addition to our quick design to help you get the technology up and running quickly, the right way the first time with best practices, but also with very strong knowledge transfer. In terms of upcoming events, we have a regular series of educational webinars and seminars, although we're taking a bit of a seminar break for the summer. So we have what is the Operations Management Suite, or OMS, and why should I care, coming up on June 22nd, and some other events in July and August that are scheduled, including an Office 365 event. You can follow us on Twitter at QTSNJ or LinkedIn, QTS, Quality Technology Solutions. That's a great way to stay up to date on our announcements for both educational events and technical announcements for our customers. And all of our webinars are recorded on our YouTube channel, which you can look up in YouTube under QTS NJ. Lastly, for those of you that are in the New York metro area, we are hosting our 9th annual QuikInVision Customer Conference on September 13th. You'll see a registration link in the follow-up email that you get from us. It's a great one-day event to take in and understand the Microsoft technology stack and step back and think about where technology is going, how it affects your business, and what you can do and want to do to take advantage of it. So we believe education for our customers and prospects is really important to help you make informed decisions, and that's why we do events like we are today. So that concludes the structured part of our event, and based on that I'll stop recording and we will open up for questions. If you give me a moment to unmute the audience and check the queue. I don't see any questions. I am hearing some background noise, so if any of you have questions, you can call them out. Going once. Going twice. Wait, we do have one. Wonder if you can map SharePoint drives natively. That's from Joseph. Marty, I don't know if you need additional context to answer that. He says he's using Z Drive now, ZEE Drive.
Yes, you can map a. This is a SharePoint server, SharePoint on-prem. I can't read the full question there, but you can map drives to a letter. Is the question around a SharePoint Online drive?
We are using Office 365 at this time.
Yeah, you should be able to have as one of your login policies to map a drive when the user logs in it would be to a specific document library. It wouldn't be to a site. It would be just to a document library in a site. If I could potentially send you some detail on that. If I'll get your, this is Joseph, I'll get your contact info from Alexandria, and I can send you more detail on doing that.
Okay. You're welcome. Any other questions? Going once. Going twice. All right, Marty, thank you for the great presentation, and thank you all for spending a little bit of time with us to learn about SharePoint. We hope to have the opportunity to discuss with you how we can help you with your plans. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.